From boyfriend to beauty. One last step. Soft rustling echoed through the bedroom as Brielle organized her wardrobe, sliding hangers from one side of the closet to the other. Dresses of every shade and style swayed gently, catching the afternoon light. As she reached for a sapphire blue dress, she noticed Roy watching from across the room. His attention wasn't on the television or his phone this time. It was fixed on the delicate fabric in her hands. "Caught your attention?" she asked with a playful grin. Roy blinked and looked away, his face instantly turning red. "I was just wondering what you'd wear for dinner tonight," he replied, trying to sound casual. Brielle couldn't help smiling. Over the past several months, she'd noticed little moments like this. Roy always seemed interested whenever they walked through clothing stores, quietly admiring dresses and soft fabrics before pretending nothing had happened. She stepped closer and sat beside him on the edge of the bed. "You know," she said gently, "if you've ever wondered what it's like to wear something like this, we could make it a fun evening together." Roy looked surprised. "What do you mean?" "I mean exactly that," Brielle answered warmly. "No pressure. No expectations. Just the two of us trying something new. If you're curious, I'm happy to help. And if you're not, that's completely okay too." Roy hesitated, searching her face for even the smallest hint of teasing. Instead, he found only kindness and reassurance. After a quiet moment, he took a slow breath. "Okay," he said softly. "I'd like to see what it feels like." Her face lit up with a bright smile. "I was hoping you'd say that." She walked to the closet and carefully searched through the collection before selecting a flowing emerald green dress. "I think this one would suit you perfectly," she said. "The color will really bring out your eyes." Roy laughed nervously as he stood in the middle of the room, unsure what to do with himself. Brielle patiently guided him through the process, helping him exchange his everyday clothes for the dress. As the smooth fabric settled comfortably over his shoulders, he paused, surprised by how light and soft it felt against his skin. Brielle stepped back, admiring the result with an encouraging smile. "So," she asked gently, "what do you think?" Roy closed his eyes for a moment, focusing on the unfamiliar sensation. The fabric moved effortlessly with every breath, feeling both elegant and unexpectedly comfortable. "It feels different," he admitted with a shy smile, "but somehow not in a bad way." Brielle smiled proudly. "Sometimes," she said, "trying something new is all it takes to learn a little more about yourself." Roy let his fingers glide across the smooth fabric, amazed by how different it felt from anything he had ever worn. The dress was light and comfortable, almost weightless, moving effortlessly whenever he shifted. "It actually feels really nice," he admitted, a shy smile appearing on his face. Brielle's grin grew even wider. "Then you're ready for the next challenge." She reached into the closet and held up a pair of sleek black heels. Roy laughed nervously. "Those? I don't think so." "Oh, come on," she teased. "You can't stop halfway through the experience." With plenty of encouragement and Brielle's steady hands to keep him balanced, Roy carefully slipped into the heels. The moment he stood up, he wobbled from side to side, grabbing her arms before he could lose his footing. "How do you make this look so easy?" he asked between laughs. "Years of practice," Brielle replied with a playful wink. "Everyone starts exactly where you are." The rest of the evening became an unexpected adventure. Roy slowly gained confidence, taking careful steps across the apartment before eventually attempting playful spins in front of the mirror. The dress flowed gracefully with every movement, making him smile in a way he hadn't expected. Brielle applauded dramatically. "Look at you. You're improving already." Roy couldn't stop smiling. The happiness building inside him wasn't about pretending to be someone else. It was the joy of discovering something that simply felt natural. "I never imagined I'd enjoy this so much," he confessed. When the night finally came to an end, Roy stood quietly in front of the mirror, reluctant to change back into his everyday clothes. Seeing the hesitation on his face, Brielle wrapped her arms around him from behind. "We don't have to make this a one-time thing," she said softly. "If you'd like, we can do it again." Roy looked at her reflection. "You really wouldn't mind?" She squeezed him gently. "Seeing you happy is what matters most to me." From that point on, Their evenings together became a regular tradition. They experimented with different outfits, explored new colors, and even laughed through Brielle's beginner makeup lessons. There was never any pressure, only patience, curiosity, and support. As time passed, Roy noticed that his confidence extended beyond those private moments. He grew his hair longer, tried new hairstyles, and slowly introduced clothing into his everyday wardrobe that reflected a style somewhere between traditionally masculine and feminine. One quiet evening while they were relaxing together, Roy muted the television. "Brie, can we talk?" She immediately turned toward him. "Of course." He hesitated before speaking. "I've been thinking a lot lately." She waited patiently. "I've spent months reading, learning, and trying to understand why dressing this way feels so right." He paused, taking a deep breath. "I think I might be transgender." Brielle didn't interrupt. She simply reached for his hand. "Thank you for telling me." Emotion filled Roy's eyes. "For so long, I've felt disconnected from myself. But every time I allow myself to express this side of me, everything feels calmer. Like I'm finally seeing the person I've always been." Without saying another word, Brielle pulled him into a comforting embrace. "I'm proud of you," she whispered, "and I'm honored that you trusted me enough to share this." After a few quiet moments, Roy looked up. "What happens now?" Brielle smiled gently. "We figured out together." She held his gaze. "I love you because you're you. Whatever this journey looks like, you won't have to face it alone." Over the following months, they carefully researched every step ahead. They connected with supportive healthcare professionals, learned from reliable resources, and took each decision one day at a time. As Roy became more certain about his identity, choosing a new name felt surprisingly meaningful. After exploring many possibilities, one name stood out above the rest. "Rosalie," he said with a quiet smile. "Rose for short." Brielle repeated it softly. "It suits you." Rosalie smiled for what felt like the first time without hesitation. "It feels like I've finally found a name that was always waiting for me." Their relationship continued to grow through honesty, patience, and mutual support. Every milestone brought new excitement, as well as new challenges. Some people in their lives struggled to understand the changes, while others offered unexpected kindness and acceptance. Through it all, Brielle and Rosalie faced each step together, discovering that openness, trust, and unconditional love had strengthened their relationship far more than either of them had ever imagined. As the months passed, Rosalie discovered that support came from more places than she had ever imagined. Friends at work stood beside her with kindness and encouragement, while Brielle's family welcomed her without hesitation, reminding everyone that love was measured by the heart, not by labels. Through every stage of the journey, Brielle remained her greatest source of strength. She sat beside Rosalie during appointments, offered comfort on difficult days, and celebrated every achievement, no matter how small it seemed. When Rosalie finally decided she was ready to live openly as herself every day, Brielle planned an intimate celebration with their closest friends. "It isn't just a party," she said with a smile. "It's a new beginning." Before the guests arrived, Rosalie stood quietly in front of the bedroom mirror. She wore an elegant crimson evening gown that fit beautifully, and for a long moment, she simply stared at her reflection. The uncertainty that had once filled her eyes was gone. Looking back at her as someone who finally appeared relaxed, confident, and genuinely happy. Brielle walked into the room and gently wrapped her arms around Rosalie's waist. "You look incredible," she whispered before placing a soft kiss on her shoulder. Rosalie turned to face her, emotion shining in her eyes. "I never could have reached this moment without you," she said quietly. "You believed in me even when I couldn't believe in myself." Brielle brushed a loose strand of hair behind Rosalie's ear. "You've always had that strength inside you," she replied. "I simply reminded you it was there." Together they walked into the living room, where warm applause and smiling faces greeted them. For a moment, Rosalie paused and squeezed Brielle's hand. "I love you." The words were simple, yet they carried every ounce of gratitude she felt. Brielle smiled warmly. "And I love you," she answered. "Today, tomorrow, and every day after." Surrounded by laughter, heartfelt conversations, and raised glasses, Rosalie experienced something she had searched for most of her life: a deep sense of belonging. For the first time, home wasn't just a place. It was being comfortable in her own reflection. Later that evening, needing a quiet moment, Rosalie stepped onto the balcony overlooking the glowing city skyline. The cool breeze helped settle the whirlwind of emotions inside her. A few moments later, Brielle joined her, offering a glass of sparkling cider. Neither of them spoke immediately. Sometimes silence said everything. Eventually, Brielle smiled. "What are you thinking about?" Rosalie looked toward the lights stretching across the horizon. "It's amazing how quickly life can change," she said. "Not long ago, I was afraid to admit who I was, even to myself. Now." She glanced back toward the laughter inside the apartment. "This still feels like a dream." Brielle nodded. "It has been an incredible journey." She reached for Rosalie's hand. "But one thing has never changed." Rosalie tilted her head curiously. "My love for you." She smiled softly. "If anything, watching you grow into the person you've always been has made me love you even more." Rosalie's eyes filled with happy tears. She wrapped Brielle in a heartfelt embrace. "I don't know how I got so lucky." Brielle smiled against her shoulder. "You didn't have to earn love by becoming someone else," she said. "You only had to become yourself." Those words stayed with Rosalie long after the celebration ended. Over the following months, she embraced each new chapter with growing confidence. Shopping trips transformed into exciting adventures as she and Brielle explored new outfits, discovered favorite colors, and celebrated every small discovery together. One bright afternoon, they wandered through a peaceful park, their hands intertwined as they strolled beneath the trees. Rosalie suddenly realized something. She wasn't worrying about how she walked. She wasn't thinking about her voice. She wasn't wondering how strangers saw her. She was simply living. The realization brought an effortless smile to her face. Brielle noticed immediately. "Something's making you happy," she said with a playful grin. Rosalie laughed softly. "I was just realizing," she replied. "For the first time in my life, I don't feel like I'm pretending anymore." She looked around at the sunny afternoon before meeting Brielle's eyes. "I finally feel free." Brielle noticed the smile spreading across Rosalie's face as they wandered through the park. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, gently intertwining their fingers. Rosalie laughed softly. "Just how happy I am. For the first time, life feels like it fits." Brielle's expression softened. "You deserve every bit of that happiness." Those words stayed with Rosalie long after their walk ended. Lately, thoughts of the future had become impossible to ignore. Marriage had once felt like a distant dream, something they talked about with hopeful smiles, but no real expectations. Now, after everything they had faced together, it felt wonderfully possible. That evening, while they prepared dinner side by side, Rosalie finally found the courage to speak. "Brie, can we talk about something?" Brielle looked up from the cutting board with an encouraging smile. "Always." Rosalie switched off the stove and turned toward her. "I've been thinking about us." Brielle gave her full attention. "You've stood beside me through every uncertain moment. You believed in me before I could believe in myself. You've celebrated every victory and carried me through every difficult day." Rosalie smiled nervously. "I can't imagine a future that doesn't have you in it." Before Brielle could respond, Rosalie slowly knelt on one knee. From her pocket, she removed a small velvet ring box. Taking a steady breath, she opened it. "Brielle Thompson." Emotion instantly filled Brielle's eyes. "Will you marry me?" For a heartbeat, neither of them spoke. Then Brielle laughed through happy tears. "Yes." She nodded over and over. "Yes. Absolutely yes." Rosalie carefully slipped the ring onto Brielle's finger before rising into an embrace that neither of them wanted to end. When they finally pulled apart, both were laughing, crying, and smiling all at once. "I love you," Brielle whispered. Rosalie rested her forehead against hers. "I love you too. Thank you for loving every part of me, even during the times I struggled to love myself." Dinner remained forgotten on the kitchen counter as they stood together, grateful for the path that had brought them there. It was amazing to think that everything had begun with one simple conversation, one borrowed dress, and the courage to be honest. Now, they were planning a lifetime together. The months that followed were filled with joyful preparations. Instead of a grand celebration, they chose an intimate garden ceremony surrounded by the people who had supported them from the very beginning. Flowers, handwritten vows, and meaningful details slowly came together until the wedding finally felt real. As the date approached, however, Rosalie found herself battling familiar worries. Late the evening before the ceremony, she lay awake staring at the ceiling. Brielle noticed immediately. "You've been quiet," she said gently. "What's on your mind?" Rosalie sighed. "I'm excited, but I'm nervous too." She hesitated. "What if I don't feel beautiful tomorrow? What if someone judges me? What if I let fear ruin everything?" Brielle leaned over and kissed her forehead. "You are going to be absolutely radiant." She smiled reassuringly. "And anyone who can't celebrate our happiness simply isn't important tomorrow." She squeezed Rosalie's hand. "Our wedding isn't about proving anything to anyone. It's about us." The reassurance eased the anxiety that had been building inside Rosalie. She nestled closer, feeling calmer than she had all evening. "I still wonder how I found someone like you." Brielle laughed quietly. "You didn't find someone special because you became someone else." She smiled. "You found me because you had the courage to become yourself." The following morning arrived beneath clear blue skies. Standing in the bridal suite, Rosalie looked into the full-length mirror. Her elegant white gown flowed gracefully to the floor, delicate lace catching the morning sunlight. Her softly curled hair framed her face, but what stood out most was the peaceful confidence reflected in her eyes. A gentle knock sounded at the door. "Come in." The door opened, revealing her mother. For a long moment neither of them spoke. Her mother's eyes slowly filled with tears. "Oh, Rosalie." She smiled warmly. "You look beautiful." Rosalie felt emotion catch in her throat. "Thank you, Mom." They embraced tightly. Although their relationship had faced difficult moments in the past, this hug carried understanding, forgiveness, and hope. Her mother gently held her shoulders. "I am so proud of you." She smiled through happy tears. "And I'm grateful you found someone who loves you exactly as you are." Rosalie couldn't stop smiling. In that moment, surrounded by acceptance from both the family she was born into and the family she had built, she felt completely at peace. The ceremony passed like a beautiful dream. Standing beneath the garden flowers, Rosalie and Brielle exchanged heartfelt vows, promising to face every future challenge side by side. When they slipped rings onto each other's fingers, Rosalie felt an overwhelming certainty. She wasn't chasing happiness anymore. She was living it. Later, surrounded by laughter, music, and the people who mattered most, the newlyweds shared their first dance beneath the evening lights. As they swayed together, Rosalie rested her head against Brielle's shoulder and smiled. After every question, every fear, and every step of her journey, she finally knew exactly where she belonged. As the music carried them across the dance floor, Rosalie rested her head gently against Brielle's shoulder. "Thank you," she whispered. Brielle smiled. "For what?" "For loving every version of me, especially the one I was still learning to become." Brielle looked into her eyes with quiet certainty. "Loving you has never been difficult," she said softly. "It's been the greatest privilege of my life, and I plan to keep choosing you every single day." The evening passed in a blur of joyful laughter, heartfelt speeches, and countless moments they would remember forever. More than once, Rosalie found herself thinking back to that first evening in their apartment. The borrowed dress, the shaky steps in unfamiliar heels, and the fear that had almost convinced her to hide who she truly was. Neither of them could have imagined where that single conversation would eventually lead. Now they stood together as newlyweds, ready to begin the next chapter of their lives. Before leaving the reception, Rosalie paused for one last look around the beautifully decorated garden. She saw smiling friends who had offered unwavering encouragement. She saw family members who had listened, learned, and grown alongside her. And then her eyes found Brielle, her partner, her greatest supporter. her wife. A peaceful smile spread across Rosalie's face. For the first time in her life, she felt completely at home. Not because of a place, but because she was finally living honestly. Hand in hand, they climbed into the waiting car as cheers and waves followed them into the night. The gentle hum of the engine filled the quiet as city lights drifted past the windows. After several peaceful minutes, Brielle squeezed Rosalie's hand. "You're awfully quiet," Rosalie smiled. "I was remembering where all of this began." "The dress?" Rosalie laughed. "And the heels." They both smiled. "I was terrified," Rosalie admitted. "If someone had told me that night we'd be married someday, I never would have believed them." Brielle leaned her head lightly against hers. "I always knew there was something extraordinary about you." She smiled. "I'm just grateful you let me walk beside you." When they arrived at the hotel, excitement settled over them once again. The wedding had been everything they had dreamed of, but tomorrow would mark the beginning of another adventure as they left for their honeymoon. Inside their suite, they carefully helped each other out of their wedding clothes before catching sight of themselves in the large mirror. 2 women, 2 wedding rings, 2 joyful smiles. Rosalie stared at the reflection for a long moment. The reality of the day finally caught up with her. Brielle noticed immediately and slipped her arms gently around Rosalie from behind. "Happy tears?" she asked with a knowing smile. Rosalie nodded. "I spent so many years believing I'd never feel comfortable with myself." She took a slow breath. "And now, I finally do." Turning to face Brielle, she added quietly, "You believed in me before I was able to believe in myself." Brielle gently brushed away a tear. "You were always the one finding your way," she said. "I simply reminded you where the path was." That night, wrapped in each other's arms, they drifted to sleep with full hearts and hopeful dreams. The following morning brought sunshine, packed suitcases, and the excitement of new beginnings. It wasn't only the tropical honeymoon awaiting them that filled Rosalie with anticipation. It was the life they were building together. Every challenge they had overcome had led to this moment. Walking through the airport, their matching wedding bands caught the morning light. Rosalie smiled as she intertwined her fingers with Brielle's once more. "Ready for our next adventure?" Brielle's eyes sparkled. "As long as it's with you always." Together they stepped toward the future, hand in hand, filled with hope, strengthened by love, and ready to write every chapter that was still waiting to be lived. The end.